Hi there and welcome to JLB Track tutorials. Risk Hazard Register. JLB Track is used to record and maintain hazards and risks in the Risk Hazard Register screen. Typically, these are WHS risks or hazards that arise from site inspections, equipment inspections, and process assessments. However, they could equally apply to food safety or security issues, or any other types of hazards or risks that are relevant to your business. Whenever a WHS hazard or risk is identified, it should be added to the Risk Hazard Register. From the main taskbar, select Safety and Environment, then Risk Hazard. To add a new hazard to the Hazards Risk Register, select the New button on the top toolbar. A new risk hazard will appear. However, for simplicity, today we'll be looking at an existing record. Complete the new hazard risk by adding the preliminary information. Add a title of the hazard risk identified. Add a description of the hazard or risk. Add which department the hazard or risk is relevant to. The date raised defaults to the current date, but can be changed to when initiated. Raised by defaults to the user entering the hazard or risk, but can also be changed by using the drop-down field. Add the operational area where the hazard or risk is located. The person or team who is responsible for assessing the hazard or risk should then be advised. This may be completed by saving the entry, then printing or emailing the hazard or risk by selecting the option on the top toolbar. The company's risk assessment process can be uploaded to JLB Track as a PDF document. It will appear whenever risk assessment criteria is selected. This will allow descriptions of the various likelihood, consequence, and risk criteria to be described. Administrators of teams can access team settings, including uploading the risk assessment criteria. To upload your risk assessment criteria, navigate to the icon in the top right-hand corner of the screen, then select Edit Team. You may then upload your risk assessment criteria document as a PDF to JLB Track by dragging and dropping it in the field. To assess the potential risk without a control implemented, refer to the company's risk assessment procedure and select the likelihood of the hazard occurring using the drop-down field. Select the consequence of the hazard using the drop-down field. The level of risk will then be automatically identified. Please note, the likelihood and consequence should be mapped against the risk in configuration, safety and environment from the company's risk assessment procedure. Then continue with the initial risk assessment by selecting whether the hazard is associated with the site, equipment, or a process using the drop-down field. Adding whether the hazard has any legislative or regulatory impact. Whether it is a significant risk or not. Enabling the company complies field if the company is complying with respective legislation or regulation. The controls or preventative measures are then determined to reduce the risk by adding the control considering the company's established hierarchy of controls. Refer to the hierarchy of controls icon to determine the controls to be implemented. Conducting another risk assessment to determine the resultant risk, using the drop-down fields for likelihood and consequence to automatically identify the risk. If further action is required to implement the control, add that action to any further action required. Then designate the person who has the responsibility for the action using the drop-down field. Finally, designate the target date when the action is to be completed using the drop-down field. Please note, the company's controls can be uploaded to JLB Track. To upload the PDF document, navigate to the icon in the top right-hand corner of the screen, then select Edit Team. Drag and drop the PDF into the field titled Hierarchy of Controls. When action is being completed, Describe the action taken. Select the date the action was completed using the drop-down field. Add the document number of any procedure that may have been developed or is relevant, for example, an SOP or SWMS. Risk assessments need to be periodically reviewed to ensure the risk assessment remains correct and the controls that have been implemented are working. Amend review dates as follows. Add the last reviewed date using the drop-down field. Add the next review date based on the risk using the drop-down field. And add the name of the reviewer using the drop-down field. The hazard or risk is not closed unless the hazard no longer exists. The hazard or risk remains on the hazard risks register showing the relevant information, including the next review date. However, if the hazard is completely removed, the manager designated to close hazards and security is to review the control and what action has been taken. And if satisfied, select Date Closed using the drop-down field, and the manager's name will automatically appear in the Closed By field. At any time, the occasions when and why the hazard or risk was reviewed can be viewed by users who have security access by selecting Review on the top toolbar, and a summary window will appear. This concludes our tutorial on the hazard risk register.